Hello and welcome to the Blues Podcast. I'm Big Boy Bloater. Thanks for joining me. You're going to be glad you did join me today, or this evening, whenever you're listening, because I have got the one and only fantastic guitarist, songwriter, singer, just amazing musician, all-round brilliant guy. I haven't seen him for a long time, so this is going to be a great catch-up. It's the one and only Dan Patlansky. Yay! Hi, Dan. How you doing?
Hello. I'm good, man. Even better to be chatting to you again, man. So thank you so much for having me.
It's good to see you. We were just talking just before the cameras started rolling about the last time we met, and it was at HRH Blues in Sheffield, wasn't it? It was about 5 years ago, maybe, or something like that, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think it was like 2015, 2016, and I remember that I only had my electric guitar and amp with me, and I was supposed to do an acoustic set like in the afternoon, and you were kind enough to lend me your guitar for the quick set I did. So thank you again for that.
No, you're welcome. It's my Tanglewood. Yeah, I remember it well because I think they kind of sprung this on us that they wanted everyone to do a little acoustic set in the daytime and then a proper set in the evening. So I turned up with my acoustic and I did like a little half hour just bashing through some stuff. And I tell you what, I find that acoustic really hard to play. In fact, any acoustic, I find it quite hard to play. And
I agree with you completely.
I remember you turned up and it's like, oh man, I didn't know I was going to do it. And I was like, here, take my guitar. It's fine. You know, do what you need to do. It's cool. You got on the stage and you played it like it was a completely different instrument. I was blown away, really. I was like,
oh, thank
man,
you.
it didn't sound like that when I played it. What?
I don't know, brother. You played directly after me, and I'm so glad I played before you because, you know, I feel when you play an acoustic guitar, it sounds like someone who knows what they're doing on an acoustic guitar. I try and play an acoustic guitar like an electric guitar, which never quite works out in my favor.
I think for me I know I can't pull off on the acoustic what I can do on the electric, so I just tend to bang the hell out of it really and hope for the best. You know, just hope it makes some noise and I'll just have a beer and try and cover things up. So, but it was really interesting for me to see you play that guitar and just the way you could whiz around it. And it was brilliant. Really, I really enjoyed that set. I really did. I think a lot of people at HRH Blues enjoyed that as well. So. Anyway, we should stop all this reminiscing about us and get on to you and talk about you because I want to, have a little chat about what the whole career really from start to finish. I mean, it's a lot of people tuning in today are going to be big fans of yours, and I'm sure they've got all the most recent records and stuff. But it'd be nice to go right back to the beginning. So if we can jump in our time machine and do that wavy sort of thing, and born in South Africa, right? Raised in South Africa.
Yeah, and actually still here.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It's a strange place to be, to come from, to be a blues player, because
Right.
South Africa in general is not exactly known for the blues and the blues musicians. But I think my love for the blues and roots music in general came from my parents' love for the music, because I grew up listening to their stuff constantly in the house, like literally every waking moment there was a record playing, and it was the old school blues stuff, the more modern blues stuff, classic rock stuff, all the, I suppose, roots based stuff. So
Yeah.
it's that was, I suppose, the seed that was planted early enough to really love the blues, and when I picked up the guitar, it felt like the most natural music to play, because I felt like I knew it because I'd listened to it so much. Yeah.
So what was going on? I mean, I know South Africa's not massively known for its blues, particularly, but what was going on mainstream at the time, music wise? I mean, was that not appealing to you?
Well, it was, I suppose it was like everywhere else. I mean, we had the same, so I was born in the early 80s, 81. And, by the time I was at the age of, listening to music and appreciating music, it was the early 90s and late 80s type of stuff. And, there was definitely a stage where I kind of fought the urge to listen to the blues because my parents listened to the blues. And I was like, that's not cool to listen to the music your parents listen to. So I fought quite hard, and I listened to, I suppose, the stuff that, other kids in 1991 and 1992 were listening to. But that was a very, very brief period. And so to answer your question, the stuff was exactly the stuff that was happening in the UK. All that kind of pop, the grunge scene was big here too. Because of I suppose our shady past, the country shady past with apartheid and all that sort of stuff, there wasn't much of a South African music scene to speak of, right? I mean, there were certainly artists. There was the odd artist doing a thing and making a name for themselves, but it was very, very difficult to do, I think, in that era. It was, if you played in a band, you played in a cover band in pubs and you did top 40 kind of hits. That's what you did, and that's what people wanted to hear. And I suppose nothing's really changed. I mean, that whole scene still exists, and it's still, I suppose, a very popular thing, but there wasn't the other side, like of saying, well, I want to do this particular thing. And, obviously, as the blues is a niche anywhere in the world, and you can imagine how niche it is in South Africa if it's niche in the UK and in the States, what I mean? So, but when the country changed and all that, it almost opened doors so you could actually go and say, you know what, sod it, I'm playing what I want to play now, and I don't care if I don't make money out of it. I don't care if the future looks bleak and grim because of because when I started with the blues, everyone just told me the same thing. It's like, oh, dude, why are you playing the blues? I mean, it's like, you need to be playing pop music. You need to be doing this and that and the next thing.
Right.
And you're like, whatever. I don't care about the money. It's just, I want to play what I'm passionate about.
If you're enjoying the Blues Podcast, then make sure to follow the Spotify playlist Blues Meets Rock. Not only is it filled with great contemporary blues artists, it also features all the guests we've had here on the Blues Podcast. So head over to Spotify and follow Blues Meets Rock to take a listen. And now, back to our guest on the Blues Podcast.
Yeah, I just thinking back to like the late 80s, the pop music that was about then. I mean, I think it was probably pop's worst period, the late 80s. So I'm not surprised that like more kids didn't get into blues, frankly, because it was what was on offer in the charts was just pretty diabolical, in my opinion. I mean, all that kind of Stock Aitken Waterman pop stuff. I mean, that was terrible, wasn't it? I mean, God. Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. It was a grim period for music. It really was. For pop music, that is. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone listening who loves the late 80s, sorry, but you're wrong. You're wrong. It was a terrible time. So, I think you did exactly the right thing getting into blues. And, I think all those people who said to you, oh, man, playing blues, you're never going to make any money. I think they probably didn't realise that no one in music makes any money anyway. So it's like, hey, well, what the hell? I don't care, Exactly. You don't get into music to get rich, right? Yeah. It's
yeah. You absolutely daft if that's what you think is going to be happening. Yeah.
There's a saying that I often use that most musicians, are either much poorer than you think or much richer than you think, and no one's kind of in the middle. Kind of, it's like the real top tier, and then everybody else is like earning nothing pretty much, kind of thing.
Exactly. So it's no middle class, no middle class at all.
So, you're in South Africa. You're growing up. It's late 80s. The music in the charts is crap. You turn to your parents' record collection. Found some great stuff in there. I mean, what was really jumping out from that record collection for you at the time? What was the main players there?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of did a backwards thing. So I started with the modern guys, of that era. So I started listening to, even though he wasn't that era, but it was kind of modern blues rock. So I started listening to a bit of Hendrix, and I felt that was like a good, for a 11-year-old boy, it was a good little, pathway into the blues. It wasn't like you're going straight into Sun House or something, right?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That takes a bit of time and listening to the blues to get to. So I started with Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then, a bunch of the, like what we consider blues rock now, like the Zeppelins of the world. And And Pink Floyd was a big influence on me.
Right. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the whole thing was, it was the album covers. As a kid, I was always so intrigued by, these crazy surreal kind of artworks and I always thought I have to hear the music that goes with this image, right? And I really got into Pink Floyd a slightly later stage, but yes, I started with the Claptons and the Stevies and Walter Trouts, like the modern blues guys.
Yeah.
And then slowly but surely worked my way backwards, and then got into, the Kings like Albert King, Freddie King, B.B. King, T-Bone Walker, Albert Collins, all these guys. And then, just kept on heading backwards until, I was listening to guys like Robert Johnson and Son House and, those old school kind of guys. And it was just an awesome experience, an awesome journey doing it that way. Because I find, with my kids, if I want, when I try and get them into the blues, and obviously that's, it's a big goal of mine to try and, cultivate that love for the blues. I never, if I put on a Son House CD, they just don't understand. Like I played my daughter Son House once, and she was like, why does it sound like so scratchy? And I was like, because it was recorded 1,000,001 years ago. That's why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I start them off with obviously like the modern stuff, and that was the same journey for me pretty much.
Yeah. I think in some ways blues is like alcohol, You don't start off on the top shelf kind of whiskies and that sort of thing. You start off on the alco pops, right? The easy stuff to get into, and you work your way up. The sweet ciders, that kind of thing. You work your way through, and as you get a taste for it, you start to develop it. And then you don't go straight to the top shelf. And I think that's my analogy for blues and alcohol. Yeah.
Big time. You're not drinking scotch on your first outing as a drinker.
Yeah, you're gonna spit that out and say it tastes like petrol, right? It's gonna be like, God,
Exactly.
man, it's just too much. It's just fire water, right? So yeah, you go for the nice alco pop and the sweet stuff, getting easy. And I think it's the same with blues. So it's
Big time.
Let's talk about guitar playing then. So you're listening to all this blues stuff, and it's obviously the guitar that leaps out for you, is it? And you say, I want to play guitar. And was it your parents who managed to get you a guitar, or did you have to go and steal one from somewhere? Or
Yeah, so all the music I grew up listening to, even the stuff that I was listening to like in the early 90s, like Nirvana, when I was not doing the blues thing or trying not to do the blues thing. It was all guitar driven, right? Everything I had almost ever heard in my life was guitar driven, and my parents loved the guitar driven type of sound. So I think it was for my 10th birthday, I got a guitar. It was one of those classical nylon string acoustic guitars.
Yeah.
And for some reason in those days, I don't know if it was the same in the UK, but it was like if you got a first guitar, you weren't allowed to get a steel string acoustic or an electric guitar.
Yeah.
You had to start off on the nylon string classical guitar with a neck this wide.
Yep, exactly the same for me. Exactly the same. Yeah.
And I think it's probably because it's softer on your fingertips or whatever the case was. But, no one explained to me, because I was clueless about the guitar itself. No one explained to me that, if I got a guitar like that and I wanted to sound like Jimmy Page or Hendrix, that's not necessarily the guitar that's going to get you that tone and that sound.
Right, yeah.
So I went to like a local teacher down the road every Thursday afternoon, and I asked him, we did the basics, and then I asked him to teach me a Hendrix song. And he showed it to me. I think he showed me Purple Haze or Hey Joe, or one of those songs. And I played it. I could kind of hear it sounded like the song, but it sounded nothing like the song. And just that, I lost complete interest in the instrument, because I was like, that sounds nothing like Hendrix. That sounds nothing like AC/DC or whatever I was learning. And no one told me, oh yeah, you need an electric guitar and an amplifier and maybe a pedal or two. That's what gets you that, or closer to that kind of sound. So I think from even that stage, tone was such a a crucial thing to me, like the tone of the guitar, because it's like the first thing I feel that hits you. You know, it's like before you hear the melody, before you hear the phrasing, the feel, it's that tone. It's like the vehicle that carries the melody and the notes on, and that's always, you know, even from those moments, I was like, that's not what I want to hear. So I lost interest and left the guitar in the corner of the room and only picked it up on Thursday afternoons just before the lesson. And blew the dust off and learned a few things in the lesson. And then, you know, my parents kind of thought, oh, he's not really interested in this. We're not going to waste our money. And I think at 13 years old, I saved up some money and I bought a very cheap, like Strat copy, right? And that's for me when everything kind of began, because all of a sudden I was going, all right, that's now closer to David Gilmour sound or Stevie Ray Vaughan sound. It's like it wasn't anywhere close, but it was closer than I was getting. And that was an inspiring thing for me to practice, to, you know, sit at home, you know, after school and on weekends, and not go to parties, because I was just so engulfed with this instrument, and sitting with a CD, I suppose, in those days, and trying to learn, you know, what was on the CD, because, you know, it was the days before tabs were you know, big on the internet, and it was a good thing, I think. You know, it was a long process, but at least your ears got trained at the same time. It wasn't just a case of, oh, it's easy, just download a tab and you can kind of play a version of the song. So for me, that was the beginning of the love of guitar playing, and I never look back, man. Still as in love with the guitar, more so than ever.
It's funny, so much of what you said there resonated with me. It's exactly my story, you know, getting the acoustic guitar, you know, the nylon string guitar at about 10 years old, you know, and playing it for the first time and thinking, well, this sounds like shit. This isn't rocking out. This is like, what is this? You know, and then basically leaving it in the corner. It's getting covered in dust. You know, every time the guitar teacher turns up, brush it down quickly. You try and, you know, you lose interest. And it was, I think it was just by chance that my dad bumped into someone in a pub and he bought like a Strat copy for £5, you know, in some dodgy bar deal or something, you know. And it was an absolute dog of a guitar. It had been painted with a big paintbrush, leopard skin, the whole thing, the body, the neck, the fingerboard, everything had been painted leopard skin, like yellow with brown spots. And it was terrible guitar. But as soon as I plugged it in and hit a chord, it was like, yeah, this is what I wanted. This is where it's at. This is, that's, and it's like, I was off then. It was great. And it was, it's interesting that, you know, I think probably so many guitarists around the world have that same story, you know, say to the mum and dad, I want to play guitar. And for Christmas, they get this nylon classical thing. I think, well, what am I supposed to do with that? That's not a guitar.
That sounds nothing like a guitar. It's like, that's not even, is this even a guitar? You know?
You don't even use a plectrum. I mean, what's going on?
I know. Yeah. It was, we have exactly the same story, in other words, because it's pretty much,
I also wanted to ask quickly as well, how, you know, growing up in South Africa in the late 80s and the 90s, how easy was it to get the music that you wanted to get hold of? I mean, obviously your parents had what sounds like a pretty good record collection, but how easy was it to go from there and go, well, you know what, I want to hear this now? And could you just go down to a shop and buy something, or did you have to do like mail order to the States or something like that?
At that point, I mean, obviously CD shops were still a massive thing, you know, and we had a ton of CD shops and music shops that you could go buy music, but 90% of them were fairly small, and most of the music was more of your mainstream, you know, top 40 sort of stuff. And if they had blues records, it would be, you know, a very, very small selection. So stuff that sells. So like you could get a Gary Moore album, you could get Clapton albums, and you could find the odd Stevie Ray Vaughan album. So when it came to looking for things that, you know, they were a little bit more niche, a little bit lesser known, that I wanted to check out and hear, because we didn't have the internet just to go, let me hear what this guy sounds like. You had to order it, pay the money, and then wait for like a month or two, because it was a mail order thing. So the CD shop itself, you would put the order in, they would find out where it was, and they would actually order it into you, and then give you ring you up when it arrived. And it was actually quite an exciting process, because it wasn't that instant gratification. You waited for like sometimes 2-3 months, and you're like, I cannot wait for this album to arrive. I've heard so much. I've read about it in the Guitar Magazine, or I've read about it in this publication. I cannot wait to hear it. And then finally the day comes where they ring you up, and you go and grab your CD, and then you listen to that CD until the CD doesn't work anymore. It's like you know what I mean? Because it's this thing you've waited for. You treasured it, and if it's something you enjoy, I mean, I would spin that CD literally until it was just non-playable anymore, and it was a special time.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing, actually. I think the way we consume music now, it almost devalues it to a point where it's just like it's throwaway. You can just listen to anything you want instantly, and you don't have that weeks and weeks and weeks of waiting to hear it, or it don't have that build up. It doesn't make it as valuable, I don't think. And I guess it's a real shame that we've lost that. But hey, that's
I think you're right. It's definitely lost value, just because we spoil for choice. And the thing that always saddens me is how often do people sit down and listen to a record from song one to the last song, and listen to the journey. Because as you know, it's not just about the individual songs, it's about the journey that the entire album takes you on. And I think in the blues that still exists. I think people would still put the record on from song one and just let it play and listen to it as a whole. But I think for the most part that doesn't happen anymore. People will go, oh, I like that song. I like track 3 and track 9, and then let me go into another album.
Yeah.
And I think you miss a big part of what the artist was kind of putting across.
Yeah. I think you're right. And also there's that thing of, you say you buy a CD and you wait for it for ages and it turns up. I've had CDs like that I bought when I was much younger, and I'd wait for this CD to turn up, and I'd put it on, and at first listening I thought, oh, this is really disappointing. It's shit. I don't like it. And it sat in my collection for months, maybe even a couple of years. And then I've gone back to it and played it and gone through it again and thought, actually, do you know what? I really like that, and I really like that. So I think your taste changes. And if you go for an album, pick out your favourites, put them in your playlist, and only ever listen to that,
sure,
then you're sort of missing out on, as your taste changes and develops, you might like something else on that album at some point. But you've already kind of binned the rest of the album, just kept the stuff you like at the time. So I think that's a real shame. But
it is a shame. And it's always great when I don't know if it's the same with you, but sometimes I'm sick of what I'm listening to. Like I'm listening to the same stuff constantly.
Yeah.
And then you get to those points where you're like, I want something new. I want something to inspire me. I want something different. And I'll sit on, like the streaming platforms and just stare at my phone and go, I don't know who to even search.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know where to begin.
There's too much.
And then you end up, there's too much. But when you got like a CD rack or a vinyl rack or whatever, you can actually, there's that I haven't heard in 6,000 years, and let me pop it in, and then you got a bit of freshness happening. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other side of the coin is as well, though, that we can, if somebody says to you, hey, you should check out this guy, he's really good, I think you'll like him, you can just instantly get online, listen to the whole catalogue and go, wow, yeah, this is fantastic. So, I mean, it's made music so much more accessible, but at the same time, more throwaway as well, kind of thing. So,
double-edged sword.
It's a shit business, eh? But what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Getting back to you anyway, we should just stop talking about music industry, talk about you a bit more. How did you get your first blues band together? I mean, obviously blues is not that massive in South Africa. How did you find like-minded people? Did you have to go to cities over and kind of find someone down a back alley somewhere, or was there a kind of a little blues kind of scene going on?
Well, I don't think there was much of a blues scene going on, but I mean, I remember putting my first band together for a school battle of the bands, right? That was like the first thing that it was the first thing I had to work towards. Like, oh right, this is gonna actually be in front of live human beings. It's not just messing around in the garage type of thing. So I had a little band together, and I don't think they were particularly into the blues, but I just kind of made a call. I said, well, I want to do the blues thing, and the bass player was pretty keen. And the drummer just kind of followed suit. And, the more we played, the more they got into the blues, the more they learned about the blues. I mean, we were absolutely horrifically awful, as a band, like everything. I've still got footage like on an old,
Oh, wow.
VCR, and it's horrific of us rehearsing. And, that's the reason I started singing, is because I could not find, I had no interest in singing. I just wanted to play guitar.
Right, yeah.
And to find someone that wanted to sing the blues, it wasn't even someone who could sing the blues. It was just someone who had the desire to even sing the blues, was virtually impossible. So, it wasn't, I wasn't chuffed about it, but I started, trying to sing, because it was just sounding boring, just playing 12-bar blues very badly for an hour in a bunch of different keys, and just noodling around with bad phrasing on a guitar. That's what it sounded like. So I started, trying to sing, the basic old, Muddy Waters and Hoochie Coochie Man, and those ones you tend to start singing, a little bit easier to sing, and it sounded like a cat being skinned. It really, really did. It was horrific. But I had no choice. It wasn't like there was like a singer waiting in the wings, and you go, oh yeah, I've given this a go. It's not. This is not for me. Let's get a proper singer. And it was just like, well, just keep going. Try and get better at it. And eventually we'll, hopefully we'll get somewhere with it. So it was a difficult thing finding players, in other words.
Yeah. But you did it. You managed it, and you persevered. Where did you guys start gigging? I mean, again, did you have to just kind of force yourself into some bars and go, look, you're going to listen to the blues now, and put up with it?
Yeah, it was pretty much like that. So that was probably like, I would say, mid to late 90s, like 97, somewhere around there. I was about 16 years old, or whatever the case was, and we had this little band. We had a little set, and in those days, I don't know if it was the same on your side of the world, but if you wanted to get a gig, you had to prepare for 4 45-minute sets.
Right. Yeah.
Right now, I don't know if I could listen to anyone in the world for 4 hours, pretty much. It's just too much. But that was like the name of the game back then. It was like, if you want to play, it's 4 45-minute sets. So we had 4 45-minute sets, and there was the odd local little venue and pub type of thing, and because there was a lot of people my parents' age frequenting these pubs, and a lot of them grew up on the same that 60s blues boom, Cream, and that sound. There was a little bit of a following for it, and there was almost a gap in the market, in a sense, because it wasn't like there was a ton of blues bands like flying around in the city. I grew up in Johannesburg. There was nothing, right? Maybe the odd guy that was doing something.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky in that sense, because when we started playing, we always seemed to get an audience in, because it was advertised, and people would see, oh, it's blues. Never heard of the guy before, but it's blues. Where else do you get to go see blues?
Yeah, right.
So we immediately we quite quickly built up a following. And in that sense, I think, very, very lucky that the music scene was, non-existent to a point, and the blues was non-existent, because you were the only one. So it's hard to fail if you're the only one, type of thing,
Yeah, it's kind of a nice situation to be in, really. I guess it's like, if you're the only band in town, hey, people are going to come and listen to you, right? I mean, did that make it harder than when you sort of started getting out further into the world, and suddenly you were up against, you're in a city and they've got 300 blues bands in this city? Did that kind of daunt you, or did you just go, no, I don't care, we've got our own thing and we're coming to do it, we're coming to give it to you, come play for you now? Was it easy or hard?
I think it was a bit of both. I think especially at that age, you're fearless, right? You like almost arrogantly fear. You're just like, listen to me. This is what you need to hear right now. This is where it's at. You got that arrogance and that confidence. But my whole life, I had older guys saying, well, wait until you hear the guys in the States. I'm sure you heard that too growing up. It's like, if you just walk down the road in New Orleans, you'll hear buskers that are better than everyone, best you'll ever hear in your life. And you're going, wow, that's incredible. And all that. And, my first kind of stint outside of South Africa was the States, and it was New Orleans.
Right. Wow.
And
at the deep end, right?
It was like, whoa, off we go. But crazy enough, New Orleans isn't Guitar City.
Yeah, right.
There's great, don't get me wrong, there's great guitar players there, but it's not like Austin or Texas, where it's just like, you just trip over brilliant guitar players. It was more of a horn city and bass player, drummer, like rhythm section city. I mean, that was just out of control. So, but it was still a very, very daunting thing doing those first couple gigs, for an American audience. And I'm this like skinny South African guy that's never left the country before. Now you're playing in the heartland of the blues, supposedly, and all that. It was daunting, but I'm glad I did it at that age, because I had that fearless kind of mentality. And it was the same coming to the UK for the first time, right? Because the UK's blues scene, at least through my eyes, is a very healthy one.
Right,
you guys have got, you're not short of exceptional blues musicians, like yourself. Like there's a scene there, and for me, when you got a healthy scene like that, and there's healthy competition, it's amazing how all your skill levels just start to immediately get better, and it'll a lot quicker, because you have to. It's that sink or swim type of thing. And then now you're hearing these guys that are like half your age type of thing, and you're going, damn, I better go home and practice a bit, and I better go write better songs. I better work my voice more, and I better work on all these different elements. And for me, the biggest improvement I've ever seen in my playing was when I started touring internationally and being on scenes that were actually populated with incredible musicians and bands. And that really pushed me,
Yeah. At what point was it where you started getting into songwriting? Was it something that you'd always kind of wanted to do alongside the guitar playing? Or was there a point where you thought, do you know what, if I'm going to do this, I've got to start writing my own songs instead of playing other people's songs?
I've always loved the thought of being able to write a song. I think it was due to the fact that I didn't just listen to the classic blues thing. It was, and I don't mean that any disrespect to the blues, but the classic blues thing has a formula. It's that that 12 bar or the 8 bar formula. There's certain formulas, and obviously there's a lot of stuff that stretches out of there too. But because I had I listened to a lot of stuff outside of the blues that was heavily song driven. It was always almost a sideline passion. I want to be able to write a song that people want to listen to, but still at the same time have my artistic voice coming across and all that. And you know what it's like, the more you do something, the better you get at it. And at the beginning, it was absolute bollocks. I mean, if I go think back to the songs that I wrote that I thought were absolute masterpieces, but you know what I mean? But you learn. The more you write, you learn how to write. And for me, the most important thing is learning how to write for me and my own voice, because I used to always make the mistake in the past of writing these songs with these epic melodies, great in principle, and you go in studio and you got 10,000 takes to get it right, type of thing. And then now it's like, now you got to go tour the album, and now you got to sing that live, and then it's just not a doable thing, because I'm not writing for my voice, because I feel I'm I'm definitely not a natural singer. I'm not one of those singers that just like from a kid was doing choir and has this natural range. I've constantly got to work on it. And, it's about knowing your voice and knowing what you sound good singing and what you sound terrible singing, and avoid that and kind of move to that side. So for me, that's been one of my biggest goals with the songwriting journey and process.
Yeah. I get that totally. When you're songwriting now these days, how do you stay within the kind of remit of the blues but keep things fresh? Or do you just not care about the remit? You just go, I'm going to write a song, however it comes out, that's how it is, and we'll see what happens.
I always write on acoustic guitars, right? Because I feel, and a producer once told me to do this, and it was quite game-changing for me. If I write on an electric, I start arranging the song before it's even written, right? So I start like working out what tones and what notes I'm going to play in the solo, and I'm like, whoa, put the brakes on. Like, I haven't even finished the song. I don't even have a melody yet. I've just written a few chords for like a verse, and I haven't gone there yet. So I write on the acoustic, which, as you know from the beginning of our conversation, it's quite a limiting thing for an electric guitar player. You can't get fancy and too crazy. So, and I also try and write with basic open chords. So like right down at the bottom of the neck, and try and say, if I can't write something with the basic open chords, then it's not worth. If I can't perform it on my own with an acoustic guitar. And I'm not relying on a band. I'm not relying on fancy tones and arrangements to make the song better. It's the song as its bare bones is strong enough. Then I know it's something worth working on. So I always start from, strange enough, a country-ish type of place. And when I say country, I'm not talking about like Shania Twain and modern pop country. I'm talking about like old school, like almost like what Chris Stapleton does. And I mean, I feel embarrassed even putting my name and Chris Stapleton's name in the same sentence. I mean, he's unbelievable. So I like to write like that. And then I always feel, as soon as I bring it to the electric guitar and I start trying to arrange it for a band and all that sort of thing, because my first love is the blues rock.
Right, yeah.
It immediately, without even trying to steer it in that direction, it goes into that direction.
Yeah.
If I like it or not, I start changing the chord voicings up, and then it sounds more blues, or a little bit more edgy, or a little bit more in your face, or whatever the case is. And then, but the whole point is, the song is still, for me, it's still there. You've still got something there to kind of go, well, that the base of the song is strong. And then the arranging is obviously the fun part is what you're going to do with it. But it always ends up being a blues in that direction anyway.
Yeah. I think it's exactly the same for me. I set out and I try and write something a little bit different, but I don't know what it is about the blues. The blues. This is going to sound terrible, but the blues is like a stench you can't wash off, right? It's always there. As soon as you start playing anything, like say on electric guitar, that you can smell it again. You can smell that smell, and it's just there. And it's not necessarily a bad stench, but it's a stench that is just won't wash off, and it's with you always. I think, for better or worse.
It is, and thank goodness for that, because I just love it, man. I really, really do. It's in the blood, and it never goes away. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, you got to live it, haven't you? Let's bring it right up to date now a little bit, because I know you've got a new album coming out. And how's it been working on that? I mean, how's not wanting to get too deep into the boring stuff about pandemics and all that, but how much did that affect you guys over in South Africa, and how much did it affect your songwriting and your playing and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, strangely enough, it was a good thing for me and a terrible thing, obviously, because, before this COVID thing hit, my entire income came from live performance. I didn't have any other sources of income. It was solely live performance. And so it was a big shock that March of 2022 when the entire world just went, we're done. And it was the same here in South Africa, everything locked down and no live performances. I mean, we even had cigarettes and alcohol ban.
Wow.
Like it was like illegal. And I was a full on smoker. So I mean, and I'll admit it, I was buying very expensive, shitty, illegal cigarettes. I felt like I was buying heroin. To be honest with you, because you're getting it's just crazy. But anyway, so that was pretty bad. But the beauty of it was I've never had that much time in my life to write, to practice, to learn new things on the guitar, learn new things with your voice. I started a Patreon page, that whole thing, and that actually got me through. It got me through, putting lessons up, and I'm still doing it to this day, and got a great community there, and that got me through financially, and I was still lucky enough to play the guitar and earn a living out of it, which was for me a miracle that I didn't have to, get another job during this pandemic.
Right.
But the songwriting thing was great, and this new album, Shelter of Bones, really, it started before the COVID thing because the original recordings were done in 2019, and it was due to be released in beginning of 2020 or April 2020. Obviously, didn't release it because I couldn't tour the album, and that was a great thing because I could really sit with the album and sit back and go, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that chorus. I can do that much better, so rewrite it. Or I played that a bit sloppy, or I didn't like the tone on that, or that whole song must go. You know what I mean? And I must get a fresh one in. So I had literally, it was like a year and a half of writing, rewriting, rearranging, and eventually went into studio last year, at the beginning of last year, and redid the parts on the album I wanted, kind of finalized everything. And I mean, when else would you get an opportunity like that? It's normally like you've got a month to record, you've got a month to mix and master, and then you got to send the album in type of thing. And it is what it is. And I mean, sometimes that's a good thing because you don't overthink stuff. And, at points I felt like I was opening up a can of worms. I was like, why are you reopening this album? Look, just leave it. But it was, I'm happy with the way it came out, and I'm happy with the changes we did. So it was a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's almost dangerous territory got into there, I think, because I think albums are kind of like films as well. I mean, a lot of movie directors always say that they never finish a film, they just abandon it. They get to a point where they're just, and I think if you had too much time to keep on looking at this album, keep on thinking about, I should change that, I think you could possibly never ever finish it. Like, you'd just be every week you'd be coming back thinking, no, I'm going to change that now, I'm going to change that now. And in some ways it's a shame because I always think an album is a snapshot of exactly what's going on then, kind of, so if you recorded an album last week and recorded it this week, it would be different, completely different. So
yeah, it's so true. It's a time capsule for where you are musically and artistically in a time in your life. So in that sense, it was draining. It was a draining thing because you lose perspective after a while. You've been listening to an album for 3 years. No one else has heard it. Eventually you put it on, you're like, one morning you're like, this is the best album I've done. Next morning you're like, this is the biggest heap of crap I've ever, that the human race will ever hear. I must just dump the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then you lose perspective. You don't like, is it good? Is it bad? Is that song good? Is it? So yeah, I definitely wouldn't want 3 years to do an album ever again.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more time than normal, but 3 years is pushing it a little bit ridiculous. Yeah.
Were you working with a producer at all at any point through this? Anyone who could actually put the brakes on and go, do you know what? That's enough. That's great. Leave it. Or spend a little bit more time on that. Or was it just down to you producing?
I produced this one. I had a couple songs on the album that were produced by a friend in Germany, but it's only 2 songs on the album, and those I was happy with.
Yeah.
I didn't change anything.
Right.
I did. I redid the solos because I was unhappy with the tone, but the fundamentals of the song and the melody and the singing, I was dead happy with. But it's like if you're the artist and you're the producer, you got to have you got to have that line, 2 different hats, the performer artist hat and then the producer hat that you've got to pop on
Yeah.
You got to keep on switching between the two. And you know, I did that on the last album, Perfection Kills, and I learnt a lot by self-producing. So I didn't find it too hard when we were tracking it. So that was fine, because I had a very clear vision, you know, and I tend to be quite a black and white person. Like, I like it or I don't. It's not like, well, I don't know. So that was fine when we were actually in the studio. It was that overthinking it afterwards, you know, like, oh, let's give the new record a listen. Let me see what it sounds like after a couple of weeks of just resting my ears. And then you're like, ooh, maybe I should redo that. That was for me the painful part. Like, it was ridiculous.
Yeah. I say, you know, dangerous territory to be in, but I'm glad you got through it. I'm going to wrap this up with a question that I always like to finish on. I want you to imagine that we are way in the future. Well, you know, it's years down the line. And the world is also a brilliant place. Everything has been cleaned up and great, and everybody's getting along, and it's great, it's happy, it's a very fantastic place. And we all just listen to Dan Patlansky records, and it's brilliant. Until one day, it's announced that this huge meteorite is heading towards the Earth, and it is going to just obliterate it. So, the president of the world, because there's a world president now, and he or she gets on the phone, he, she, or them, whoever gets on the phone, and says, Dan, I'm sure you've heard, you know, the terrible news that the world's going to end. But, you know, we want to put a good spin on this. We figured we're going to have this huge party to go out on. You know, the human race is going to have this massive party together, and we're going to put everything into it. Dan, we want you to come and play a gig for us at this party, you know. And the question is, it's a two-part question. The first thing is who's going to play in your band at this gig to end all of civilization? And what song would you pick to play?
It's a great question. That is a very, very good question. So I would play as a trio because it's my favorite format to play in. I absolutely love it. And now I've got to think about live players, and I would have a guest or two popping on the stage just because we can. So,
well, don't forget as well, it's in the future, so you can have like holograms as well of musicians who are gone. Like, you know, so the whole world has opened up. You can have anybody you want, kind of, you know, in the band or guesting or anything. You know, so just to make things even more awkward.
I would probably have the Band of Gypsies as my rhythm section. So. Buddy Miles. Oh, now you've caught me because I can't remember what the other cat's name was now. I had it literally a second ago. Anyway, Band of Gypsies is my rhythm section. I would have my all-time hero as a hologram. I would have Stevie popping on the stage.
Yeah,
definitely. I would have, and I'm sorry, David, but I'm sure David Gilmour would have, you know, perished by by that point, or maybe medical stuff is advanced,
robot parts and all that. Yeah, it could be
all
still,
that, you know. So there we go. I'll go with that. Let's go with a bionic kind of David Gilmour would definitely come up. I would probably have Greg Allman coming up and maybe doing a bit of vocals, because I've one of my favorite singers of all time. And probably Art Neville on B3 maybe popping up too. So I don't know if that would be the greatest party band to celebrate like, oh, the world's going to end, but it would be a very happy place for me, a very selfish place for me, because but it would be a good thing, man, I think. Yeah.
And what song are you going to do?
I suppose it all depends. I mean, if we're going to do a sad song, you know, because the world's ending, I'll probably do Ray Charles' Drown in My Own Tears, which is like Ray Charles is one of my all-time favorites. And if it was more of a happy song, do I know any happy songs? Pride and Joy by Stevie, it's got a nice up tempo shuffle.
Got a great, lovely groove.
So it'll probably be one of those. But I think more than likely it'll probably be the Ray Charles thing because the world's ending, and it's
just as the meteorite's coming down, I can see that last chorus playing out. That'd be beautiful. I think. Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, fantastic, Dan. It's been so wonderful to talk to you today. It really has. I want to just say lots of good luck to you, and I hope at some point we meet along the road again somewhere, and I hope you're having a great time. And everybody, check out Dan's gigs. He's a great player, really is a great player and a great guy. So, Dan, thank you so much for talking to us today here on the Blues Podcast.
Hey, well, thank you so much for having me. It was great to reconnect with you, brother. I hope to see you soon. And take it easy, and great stuff.
Au revoir. Thank you for joining us on the Blues Podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. And also make sure you leave us a review and a rating, as this helps other people find the Blues Podcast. I'll catch you next time. Bye.